Okay.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Everybody, welcome to another episode of Immigration and Travel. I'm here with a very good friend of mine, a friend that I've traveled with in the past. Her name is Megan, and I'm very excited to talk to you today because you will be my first guest that will be focused on what it feels like to traveling alone um, as a girl, as a grown up woman. And we've
Woohoo.
talked and we've had a lot of stories in the past between us as we've traveled, as we've spoken on the phone and everything. But I want this to maybe inspire other girls to do what you're doing and to find an alternative lifestyle and not have everybody follow the same pattern. So
Yeah,
first of all, how are you doing today and where are you located?
I'm doing really well. I'm actually in Mexico at the moment. I'm looking over a nice beach, looking at the beach right now, so I have no complaints.
Nice. And you're in Mexico? Where exactly?
Yeah, I'm like 30 minutes south of Tijuana in like a super little town just past the border. Yeah, it's
Okay,
called San Antonio del Mar.
nice. And what made you want to spend your time there right now? Have you been there before?
Yeah, I've been here so many times. I ended up coming here last year actually through like a big chain of events, but I ended up here because a friend of mine that I met in Ireland like 5 years ago, I hosted him once and then he ended up staying at my house for like a week because he was traveling and then I knew he moved to Tijuana. So when I got it last year for the first time, I sent him a message and he told me stay as long as you want and been nearly a year. No, I've left in between, but I've definitely stayed a lot longer than I planned. It's a really nice area here.
That's awesome. So usually, and told you this before we started recording, I like to dig deep into people's lives, like how they started, how they got to the point in their lives that they're in now. We're gonna try to condense that today so that we just focus on like the substance. But I do want
Mhm.
you to kind of tell the listeners your upbringing, like where you're from and when you decided to travel. I know that in the United States, there's a stigma to traveling. It's not as open as it is in Europe, and
Yeah.
that's kind of obvious because the transportation system isn't like the most accessible. It's mostly people driving cars across states. It's
Mm.
more typical to do like a 50 or renting a van and driving across all 50 states. There's so many national parks. So many things are oriented towards national parks and nature in the United States. So that in itself is beautiful. But in Europe,
Mhm.
there's so many little towns, so much history, so many little places to find and a way better transportation system. So I know personally right off the bat that
For
it's the
sure.
transportation system in Europe helps a lot. But for you personally, like I said, what is your upbringing and when did you decide you wanted to start traveling?
I actually grew up in like a super small town. It's like a town of 400 people. I didn't even live in town. I lived in like outside of town. So I've always grown up in the countryside. So when I turned 18, I moved to the big city straight away because I wanted to venture out. I wanted something bigger and some more, yeah, something new, I guess, and something bigger. So I moved to Utrecht, which is like one of the main cities in Holland, and I started studying there. And while I was studying, I did a lot of traveling because I was working full time, so I was making good money. And I pretty much went away at least once a month. Like it used to be, and I'm sure it still is, but I haven't been in years. Like so cheap to buy a flight from pretty much anywhere in Europe. You could buy flights for like $20. So I think that's how the traveling kind of started. I would just travel to a different city every month. And then eventually, my third year of uni, I ended up going abroad. I was supposed to go abroad for like 4 years, sorry, 4 months, and ended up staying away for like a whole year because I just wanted to see more of where I was. I ended up studying Glasgow, and then back, I finished my uni degree. And a few months after I graduated, I ended up booking a single flight to Bangkok, and it's been almost 5 years, and I haven't looked back since.
So you were born in the Netherlands. You were born in a little town of 400 people.
Yeah.
And were these people, because I know in like bigger cities in Europe, people do tend to travel and they're pretty aware of the accessibility of flights, like you mentioned. You think your town, most people kind of left and went to that big city and then started traveling, or do you think they had more of a small town mentality?
Most people stayed. Most people actually never really left the province where I was. There's a few people that would, the only reason why people would leave the province was studying pretty much because there's no university where I was born. So people would leave the city to start studying and then maybe they'd stick around because there's more opportunities there. But I'd say generally in the small towns, most people don't travel much. But once you get to the big city, because there's such a big community of people from all over the world and students from all over the world, that's where you really like start meeting people that want to venture out and travel more.
Nice. So you graduated, you went to school, you went to university, you
Uh-huh.
graduated, and you immediately bought a ticket to Thailand.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to go travel and I knew I didn't want to start working straight after. I wanted to try something else. I was scared of getting stuck in this like working life where I'd be behind a desk for the rest of my life. So I thought I'd like go out for a year, like a few months at least, and see some of the world. So I left a few months after I graduated. I saved up. I got like three jobs and I saved money as I go. And yeah, I just booked a single flight to Bangkok with a backpack, and that's how it
So you're by
started. Really, the big
you were by
my trip.
y-
Hmm.
you were by yourself. You didn't did this first trip was not with anybody else? Was it just you?
Yeah, it was just me. I didn't plan anything. I booked the flight to Bangkok. I think I booked a hostel for the first 2 nights. I didn't go with anyone. I didn't speak the language. I didn't even know anything in Thailand apart from Bangkok. I had no idea there was even like a full moon or islands. I didn't know anything. So I just booked the flight and hoped for the best. And the second I arrived, I knew I would probably stay around for a while.
That's crazy. So had you seen other people before? Like, let's focus on women. Had you seen another woman before that, maybe a friend or maybe somebody online that that was traveling by herself, and did that inspire you?
Yeah, well, for the course I did at university, it was mandatory to study abroad for like at least one semester or like a whole year if you wanted to. So I saw most of the girls that were in my degree, some of the girls went to Australia, some girls went to like China. There's like a whole bunch of places girls went. I ended up staying actually pretty close because my family's from Scotland, so it was a good opportunity to live like close to my family for a year. So I didn't venture out that much, but I remember seeing like a bunch of girls who would go to the other side of the world, and I was actually really impressed with them just going all the way to Australia by themselves. Um, but yeah, turned out not to be so difficult. So
That's amazing. So you get to Thailand, and well, I guess the first question is, it's cool to travel, it's cool to be out there, challenge yourself. How do you sustain yourself financially?
So I saved up a bunch before I left. I was working like three jobs. I always worked full time next to studying because I just wanted to have enough money to travel. So I've always had like a bit of some savings for traveling. But I thought I saved up my first trip for like 6 months. I was like, oh, it'll cost me maybe like $1,000 a month, roughly, to travel around, which is pretty accurate in like Southeast Asia where I went. Um, I started in Thailand and I went to like a whole bunch of places in Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and I somehow ended up in Laos, where I then got a job at a local bar. And I just got this job because I met two guys in Vietnam and they ended up being on the same bus, which took 24 hours to Laos, and they both started working there. So they said, why don't you come work here? And I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. And I ended up staying for 6 months, and that managed to extend my travels by like 6 months because they would pay me food, they would pay me accommodation, food, and drinks, a lot of drinks. But yeah, basically, I wasn't spending anything for 6 months, and I was living in this beautiful place with amazing people, learning so many things about myself, the country, the people around me. So yeah, even if you don't have much money, there's so many ways for you to like
Yeah,
prolong your traveling.
I think that's besides, actually taking that first step. It's like what comes after. I feel like a lot of people will launch them, so it's already hard enough, but a lot of people, take that big first step, and then the first question after that kind of wears off is, how do I maintain this, um so you
Yeah.
just answered that. You say that you run into people, and I can attest to that fact as well, that as you travel, you're just going to meet people, and they're going to provide you with opportunities, and it's up to you if you want to take them or you don't want to take them. But the opportunities will come, right? So it's almost
Oh
like you don't have to
yeah, for
worry
sure.
too much as long as you're in those situations where you stay around people who are also traveling, who also have that same kind of energy. I do think you will have proposals that you can either take or leave, right?
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so, um, how was tell me real quick, how was it living in Laos, and where did you say you worked?
So I worked at this little bar in Bang Bien. It's just a small town in like the mountain areas, but there's a it's really popular for backpackers. So there's not that many backpackers that go to Laos. Most people stay in, like Thailand, Vietnam. Some people might go to Cambodia, Malaysia, but most people skip Laos. So there's still backpackers coming through, but it's not like Thailand. Basically, these people would come here. There's like a river that went through the town, and it was kind of like a pub crawl, but then with tubes. So you had like all these blow up tires, and people would get in one. You'd rent them from the town. They'd bring you to like a part of the river, and you'd like float all the way down. And people would pull you in. They'd have bar on each side of the river where we would work. So we worked at the first bar, and we basically just played drinking games with people and like got them to stay in the bar as long as we could. We worked behind the bar a little. But yeah, that was our first job. And then at night we would work at a different bar. In town, there's only like two main bars, so pretty much all the backpackers would travel through. Um, so yeah, you'd still meet a lot of backpackers there as well.
And then how many girl travelers did you meet during that time? I guess when you first started to travel and you ended up at that point, like, had you met people just like you, girls just like you?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely met girls traveling by themselves as well, but I noticed a lot of girls who travel in pairs or in groups. But there was definitely girls traveling by themselves as well. I think also when you say I'm traveling by myself, I never feel like I'm really traveling by myself because you probably know as soon as you arrive anywhere, there's always immediately someone or a bunch of people that you click with and that you end up hanging out with and maybe even travel with for a while. So I feel like you're never really by yourself. But I met another girl that was actually traveling with a friend pretty easily, pretty fast on in Thailand, and her friend ended up going home. So we traveled together for a few months, 2 months maybe, which was really nice. But then after, yeah, we went our separate ways. But it's pretty easy when you're traveling solo to meet
Yeah,
other solo travelers as well to
you're
bond
totally
with.
right about
Hmm.
saying you never feel like you're by yourself. In fact, I'd say my experience, most places I leave, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna miss, and then you have like this list of people that you're like,
Yeah,
because I think we talked about this in person. You aren't sure when you're gonna see these people ever again. Like you
I
hope to see
know.
them some other place at some other time, but it's not a guarantee. So you're almost like that is now stuck as like that energy of the week or whatever we did. That's now stuck in our memories, and that's fine, and that's fine. But you're gonna miss it, as soon as you leave that place.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so so it's like cool to continue on and seeing different places, but there are places you're like, man, I really like this one, and I'm gonna miss and have all these crazy memories of this place. And I mean, if you really felt like yourself by yourself, then I don't think you would miss and people.
No, it's mostly the people, not the places. Everywhere I go, everywhere I end up staying longer, it's always the people I met, not the places where I am. The people are by far the most important aspect of traveling, for me at least. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's weird, but these people are all pretty. They're like us, They It's not like you're gonna go somewhere and you're gonna meet somebody so different from you. I mean, they're doing the same kind of life. So
Yeah.
you do
Hmm.
tend to click with these people more easily, even in your own hometown. Like you could gather 10 people from your hometown, and you may not get along with any of them because they all have different
Yeah.
mindsets. But
Hmm.
once you put people in a hostel and they're kind of there for the same purpose, you just strike up a conversation. I remember being in Jordan recently,
Yeah.
and like this hostel was really small. It was like a house turned into a hostel, and there was a couch, like a living room with a very comfortable couch, and it was so knitted together because the space was very closed, and you just sat down on the couch and people were just chatting for hours. Hey, where have you been? What have you done? And you just talk about countries, you talk about cultures, you talk about things you didn't know a few seconds before. And it's so
Oh
cool to
yeah.
talk to people and not have the same sort of conversations, not like sit there every
Yeah.
weekend and, hey, like, how's blah, blah doing? Oh, she's good. Blah. No, it's like you meet somebody new, they have a totally different trajectory, and nobody has ever really done the same trip. Maybe they visited the same places, but the same path, nobody has the same path.
Yeah.
So it's cool to sit
Hmm.
there and talk to people and learn and get inspired. And I've seen so many girls that travel by themselves, and they've been to countries. And this is something I want to ask you. Like, most of the people, sorry, most of the girls that I talk to, they haven't really had that many bad experiences. So let's
No.
focus on the beginning of your trip, like in the Asian countries in Southeast Asia. Did you feel in danger? Did you feel like maybe the opposite sex was looking at you the wrong way, or in a suspicious way? Like, did you have any bad feelings or any occurrences?
I think it's always gonna happen when you're like, I'm a pretty pasty white girl. So for a pasty white girl to go to a country where there's not many pasty white people, of course people are always gonna like stare and like look. But I think Southeast Asia was the first place I went to, and I was surprised by, maybe not surprised, but like I was happy about how respectful everyone was there actually. And I didn't get any bad vibes, bad intentions from people generally. Of course, sometimes, you're like in the middle of the night in a big city or like on a bus and you meet some like dodgy people. But I don't think I've experienced anything more unsafe there than I would in a big city at home. Yeah,
And
for sure.
now you mentioned that at the start you've been doing this for 5 years. So can you quickly give us, like, I know maybe you won't remember them all, but where have you been, and where do you think you maybe if you've had a bad experience where you felt the most in danger? Do you also pick places based on reputations? Like, maybe you haven't been
No,
to.
actually, not at all. Um, I don't really research any of the countries I go to before I go. Most of the places I've been to, for example, in Central America, like Honduras, El Salvador, even like Mexico, they might have like a bad reputation for people, but the second you arrive there, you realize that it's not like that at all, and they're all people as well, and they're even friendlier people maybe than people that you're used to back home. Yeah, it's a shame that so many people are scared to go somewhere just because of maybe how the media portrays it or because of how other people have experienced that place. But I've been to Southeast Asia, Australia, obviously Europe, Central America, South America, the States. I've traveled pretty much everywhere by myself, and I've never had a really scary experience in 5 years. Never.
And that's really, really good to hear. I think that will fill people with confidence, or girls with confidence, if they hear this.
Hmm.
But do you think there are places out there that maybe are a little bit too scary for you, that you might be like, you know what, like, for example, I don't know if you've been to Africa, but like, or North Africa, or I don't know,
I haven't been
maybe.
to Africa yet. No.
Do you think that would play in your
You know,
mind?
I'm sure there are places that it's safer for me not to go. Even in every country you go to, there's areas where you don't go. I just came back from Colombia. There's areas where you should go. Here in Mexico, like I'm really close to Tijuana, which supposedly is one of the safest places. But if you're smart and you just pay attention to what happens around you and you read a situation well, you can go anywhere. Like if you're smart enough not to take I don't know, you don't walk around the big city by night by yourself. If you feel something's a bit over dodgy, it probably is. So just don't interact with it. Don't go with it. If you're taking a taxi and something doesn't feel right, then just get out, take a new taxi, like there's so many things. If your gut tells you that something's not right when you're traveling, then you should just listen to it. And there's always so many ways to get out of situations. But I'd say out of all countries, the place that people told me not to go to and that was really dangerous was Honduras, and that ended up being one of the best trips of my entire life. I spent 7 months there, and I never felt unsafe there, not 1 second. No.
Right. And when did you go to Honduras? Because you've told me this story of being there during COVID times, right?
Yeah, last year I was traveling Central America. I was in El Salvador, and I was in a little city called Santa Ana, I think it was called. And that was one of the places actually where I didn't feel very safe. There was a very tense atmosphere there. I was traveling with my two friends, Ash and Mel, from Australia and Sweden at the time for a few months, and they had the same feeling. So we just all decided not to stay in El Salvador, even though I'm sure there's beautiful places in the rest of the country that we didn't experience. But we decided to go to Honduras because my friend's sister recommended us the place, and we packed all of our stuff and took like 7 or 8 local buses to get to this little island called Utila. And then we were 2 weeks in, and it was the start of the pandemic. We were starting to hear things about like things closing down, flights being canceled, and we were on this small like little diving island in Honduras. And then I think the pandemic really started maybe like early March, was it? Late March. And then they basically gave us the choice. They said, this is the last day you're gonna be able to leave the island. We're gonna stop all the ferries, we're gonna stop all the boats. If you want to go, go now. If you want to stay, we don't know how long you're gonna be here. So I guess we all thought it was only gonna be a few weeks at the beginning of the pandemic. 95% of people fled the island because they're all scared something crazy was gonna happen. And we ended up being stuck there for 6 months on this
Wow.
little island for the
I can't
pandemic.
imagine being stuck somewhere for 6 months, especially on an island. Like, what about medical care? What about food? What about like all the essentials?
That's the reason why so many people left. There was not a lot of medical care. There was like one little clinic and one doctor, I think. There was
Oh my
yeah, that
gosh.
was pretty much all the medical there was. There was boats that would come in once or twice a week from the mainland to provide food. Um and people were scared they were gonna stop the ferries, but we've always thought like we're on an island full of people. They're not just gonna let a whole island of people starve. If something's gonna happen, they'll bring us at least food to survive. But none of that ended up even being close to reality at all, because we had the best time of our life for 6 months. We didn't have to worry about food. We had no cases on the island because the island was like in a full like lockdown. People didn't come onto the island or leave the island for 6 months. So we had no cases. The food was still coming in.
So what kind of
The
food were you guys eating on a day-to-day basis?
Pretty much just the food, a lot of local food as well. I'm vegan now. I wasn't at the time, but we eat a lot of fresh fruit, vegetables, a lot of beans. Like pretty much everything was there. The only thing they ran out of was like certain types of beer and cigarettes because people stocked up on them, including us, I suppose. But no, we never ran out of anything. We never really had to fear for anything. We had a lockdown in the beginning where we couldn't leave the house after I think it was 6 or 7 p.m. But we met a group of 7 people the last day of the ferries, and we all decided to stay. So we rented a house together, people from all over the world, like Germany, England, Canada, Australia, Denmark, Holland, Honduras. We had like everyone, and we just all got this huge house together, and we just pretty much set out the whole pandemic there. Yeah,
It's so
really cool.
crazy. It
Hmm.
never fails to amaze me that you guys were there because I mean, I guess I'm brave, but to be stuck in one island for 7 months, it that's very crazy. And
Hmm.
what would you guys do for fun? Would you just run around the island, jump in the water, like do stupid childish stuff since there was nothing else to do? Like what were you
In
guys
the
doing?
in the in the beginning, we were just partying. We were just partying so much because there was nothing else. They closed the bars and the restaurants, so and at
Oh,
night it was like the beginning, so no one really knew what rules were gonna get enforced. So we weren't allowed to leave, I think, the house after 7 p.m. But we met a few. We knew like most of the backpackers on the island because there was so little. Like there was maybe, I want to say, maybe like 40 of us left there, and we all had different houses. So we'd sneak over to each other's houses and we'd like drink there. And then as soon as the lockdown became a bit easier, I think that only lasted a few days or weeks, to be honest, and people just didn't care. People just went on to the streets because everyone's like, there's no cases here. Everyone went about their day. Um, but
so
we'd
nobody
go
got
to the
sick the
beaches.
entire time.
No, no one. No, there's no
That's cool.
cases
Did anybody
at
get
all. It's
sick for
pretty
other
cool.
purposes?
Uh, Hangovers. A lot of hangovers. But we moved houses a few times.
Oh,
So that kept like things interesting. I think we went through like 5 or 6 houses. They're
sorry,
all
sorry.
dirt cheap.
Just to clarify, how did you guys rent the houses? Like, where people offer kind of opening their doors to your house, or and how much was each house? How much
Um,
rent?
so cheap. It's because this was like the start of summertime, so people it's pretty touristy and like the high season. A lot of people come there. It's called Utila. It's the cheapest place in Central, sorry, in Central America, I think, to dive. So a lot of people go there to get their diving. So they
Mm,
do get a lot of tourists, but because the whole island shut down, people had all these like holiday rentals free, and no one. So people were basically fighting for us to get into our house. They were just lowering and lowering the prices because there were like only a few of us, and there was so many places available. So we were paying something like, I want to say, in the first house maybe $5 a day
oh
for
my
this
gosh!
house,
Between all
like
of
a
you or each?
each, yeah,
Oh,
maybe
okay,
five
no, that's good. That's pretty. Yeah, that's really
five
good.
dollars a day, and then we just moved to like different houses towards the end. But there was three of us living in the house. We had a two-bedroom apartment right by the ocean. Like literally, you'd open the door from the kitchen, you'd take like a few steps, and you're in the ocean. And that cost us, I think it was $2.50 each a night. And I had like my own double bedroom by the ocean.
Wow.
It was good. Yeah,
Well,
it
how
was
was the
really good.
weather
But
during the whole time you guys were there? Did you get was it hot? Is it hot all year
hot.
round?
Yeah, it's hot all
Really?
year round. It gets hot and then it gets really hot and then it gets hot again.
It gets
Um,
hot and then it gets really hot.
it gets really hot and like really mosquito-y and sandfly. It's like a month where I think it was towards the end October where it was starting to get like real hot and we're getting like tropical storms. It's pretty cool. But
God,
it was always warm. Yeah, it was always
that's
warm.
so
It
crazy.
was nice. But yeah, there was some really beautiful beaches close to our house. Looking back, I don't really know what I did for 6 months, but I think the main thing was definitely partying, going to the beach. There was like a dog shelter there, so in the mornings I'd walk like 5 different dogs from the shelter to the beach, which was like the nicest thing because these dogs would sit in their little cage all day and then get released on the beach. We'd find things to do. Yeah.
So you had a good time. Was anybody starting to get desperate though? Did people after a while, after maybe having fun for so long, maybe they started thinking, okay, this is enough. I need to go. Did you start seeing faces change?
All of us were
Yeah.
ready to go after 6 months. It was so amazing and so beautiful. But after 6 months, like we're used to traveling. Like I never stayed anywhere for longer than a few days or weeks. We've never stayed
Yeah.
anywhere this long before, and it was so small. It was the same people. Like towards the end, all of us were like, "This has been amazing, but we need something new." So I think after like 6.5 months, they decided to start the ferry back up, and me and my friend Ash and our other friend Nico, who you also met, the three of us decided on the first ferry, like, let's get off this island. So we took the first ferry to the mainland,
Yeah.
and then we kind of just hoped for the best because everything was still closed, but we didn't even care where we were going. We just wanted to go somewhere else, and we ended up hitchhiking for a whole month through like the mainland,
That's
Literally, we went everywhere
crazy.
for a whole month, and
Because
everyone told us,
that's something I've never
mm,
done. I've never hitchhiked anywhere. I'm so scared compared to all you like I'm not just you, but a lot of people that I meet while I travel. It's like, oh yeah, I hitchhiked from here and here and here, and I'm like, holy crap, you guys trust people way too much. And I'm a guy who trusts
yeah,
people. Like I'm not a guy
mm-hmm,
who's like I don't think people have anything. Well, you know, like you said, there's intuitions and all that, but I
yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
put myself out there like that. I like my comfort of taking a bus. I like my comfort if I have to pay a little bit extra. Yet there's people that are so like it just instilled in their
Mm-hmm.
mind. No, I'm not going to spend any unnecessary money. And part of that routine is hitchhiking, which will save you a lot of money.
Oh
How
yeah.
many countries have you hitchhiked in, and have you ever felt unsafe?
Um, Hitchhiking, I think it isn't even really that much for the money because in Honduras, instead of taking a $2 bus, we would take like we would try and get a ride. It was mostly the fun of it. It was so fun, like meeting all these people. We'd like usually we'd be in the back of a truck. At some point there was actually six of us. So we'd have like we'd actually have to like two or three of the girls standing by the road like trying to hitchhike, and then people would pull over. We'd call like the rest of like our friends, the guys, and all of our luggage over to come jump in with
Wow.
us as well. So I never actually hitchhiked by myself. I'm not sure. I probably
Mm.
would, but I would be more, definitely more cautious. But because we were with a big group of people, I never really worried about it. But yeah, like I said, it wasn't even really to save money. It was just, yeah, the best view. So instead of sitting in a hot little minivan for 5 hours to get somewhere, we would literally sit in the back of a pickup truck in like open
Mhm.
air in the sun.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'd sit on top of like boxes of fruit. We'd have to like, we sat in the back of like minivans. We sat with this, I don't know, we sat in some sort of church truck full of like, they were driving to a church and they drove us with this like big Jesus figure on the side. And yeah, it was really
That's
cool. Hmm.
those are such. I mean, I'm living. I'm like thinking about that experience through your testimony because you know I've lived similar tales and they're so unique and they're things that you
Hmm.
can't plan for. You can't go and pay somebody to go and get it as you can't pay for them. They're just priceless
Yeah.
experiences and yeah, a lot of them have a little bit of risk attached to it. I don't think that one carried as much risk, but you never know. It's still Honduras. It's still a land full of
Yeah.
gang members, and people could kidnap and this, that, and the other. So,
Uh-huh.
it's cool when there's a little element of risk attached to something, and then you end up finding out that there is no risk at all, and it just becomes
Yeah.
all so much more fun and satisfying. So
Oh, for sure.
that is cool to hear. And that's something that in Jordan was Jordan is a very interesting country. It's kind of big, but it's small, and people, all of them hitchhiked, and all the hostels that I stayed in. Let's say I would meet you, right? And then let's say I added you on
Hmm.
Instagram, and then the next person that I met at the next hostel in a different city, they had already met you. So you met people like the next person you would meet had already met some of the people you just met, and at the end you looked
Oh
and it
yeah.
was like wait, all these travelers like met each other at some point because there's not that many hostels and there's not that many cities. And
Yeah.
also there's like one bus that goes from like there's maybe three big cities and it's like just imagine Jordan, it's kind of desert landscape and there's one long road going north to south and it's so easy to hitchhike. And yet I still didn't feel like I wanted to hitchhike. I still felt like I wanted to pay $14 for the bus and everybody
Hmm.
else that I met was like, "No, man, like you just hitchhike." And also, even to the airport in the city, South City of Aqaba, I was like asking my hostel owner, I was like, "How do I get to the airport tomorrow?" And he's like, "Just go hitchhike." It's like the norm, you know, because
It's
there's like
so normal.
one road, and I'm still like, I don't know if I would do that, you know. And I've actually met plenty of girls who hitchhike all the time, and they've never had a bad experience. And I'm just like, is it me that
No.
lives in America or is from America that
I don't know. You know what it is? I think it's also hitchhiking in like a Western country. It really is different from like hitchhiking in a third world country because I feel like whenever you're in States or in Holland where you try to hitchhike, there's this like people always kind of expect something in return, or there's
Yeah.
like somehow they're giving you a ride, so you need to give them, I don't know, something in return somehow. And I never, you don't get that feeling when I was in Honduras. People pick you up and like help you and they're nice to you because they genuinely want to help you, not because they want something in return. And it's the same with hitchhiking. Everyone, it doesn't even cross their mind. They drive, they see someone next to the road, like, oh, I have a car, I have a space, like get in. That's easy, right? In the States, people, or in Holland, people would be like, oh, like, should we pick this person up? You don't know where they've been, you don't know this. Like, there's always, it feels different. Um,
And you're
so
totally right
maybe
about you're totally right about it not being about the money, because now I remember somebody telling me recently that they hitchhiked for the experience, and they were pretty frugal people, but they said, no, I mean, I could pay for the bus, but I want the experience. And I forget where they were from, but I think they were mentioning that in the States it took them like maybe like, I don't know if he said days, or he must have said hours though, but he said like a really high amount of hours in like a very well located spot where he thought it would be the easiest for somebody to pull over, pretty much like the perfect location. And people would rather give him money for so that he would take the bus, thinking he was just so desperately like in financial trouble, then here's some money, go take the bus. And they're like, no, I want to meet somebody and travel with that person wherever they're going. And they were just
oh
like, what?
yeah,
Like, what do you mean?
yeah.
Um, so that's how we think about it. I think, I don't know each state, right? I know my state, California, but it's so different. It's so different. But it's
Well, it's
nice
the
to
same
hear
with
that.
couch surfing. Couch surfing, right? When you think about it, it's like staying at people's house for free. I do it all the time. You do it all the time. Like most of the time, it's not because you don't have the money. Like I have the money to pay for a hotel or a hostel or wherever I want to stay. It's like this the experience you get from people that offer their house for free for a backpacker. It takes a certain person to do that. The same with picking up hitchhikers. It's just a certain people you meet, I guess. And yeah, definitely it's a nice bonus that you don't have to pay for anything, but it's definitely not the main reason for doing hitchhiking, for couch surfing. It's definitely the people.
I
Yeah,
think it just pulls you closer to what humanity should be like, which is just nothing in exchange, just talking, having conversations, sharing life knowledge. You know, whatever I've lived in life, like that is interesting to somebody else, and whatever somebody else has done is interesting to me. And I think we live in societies that separate us into like boxes, and it's like we don't
for
really
sure.
kind of have those natural conversations. And anytime we want to do something, it's a transaction. So that's the freedom that traveling gives you, I think, is you really nobody. Yeah, you're gonna meet people, but like it's mostly like in tourist traps or something like that are genuinely there because it's their life and they have to make
Hmm.
money. They have to get some money out of you. But for the most part, it's like just so basic, the basic nature, like showing up somewhere and some, oh, you need somewhere to crash? Yeah, I have someone here. And the thing about couch surfing is that the title kind of misleads people because you're not really sleeping on couches all the time. you
No,
Most of
it
the
could
time
be
you're sleeping
anywhere.
in, yeah, you're sleeping in, I've slept in crazy places, places that would cost me hundreds of dollars per night, staying in really, really unique places as well.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's very cool. And since we're on the subject, so you've never all had a bad experience staying in a stranger's home?
Couch surfing. No, I've never. No, I've never had a bad experience anywhere. And it also helps when you have an app like couch surfing where people, so as you know, like leave reviews and references. It's like a little extra security that you have when you're a girl or even a guy when you're traveling by yourself and you go into someone's house. Like it sounds so crazy, but when you see 10 other travelers have stayed there,
Yeah.
you don't you don't get that. But of course I've never stayed at someone's house where I had a really bad experiences, but I've met up with people couch surfing in the US actually. And I think that's the only place where I've had bad experiences in the
Really?
US. Yeah, in LA. I had a few odd ones in LA. But other than that, no, I've never. never. But I also think like when you have good energy, you also attract it. So I
That's
always go
true.
into a house. I don't even look at what someone's house look like. I don't know if I'm gonna sleep
Yeah.
on a couch or a bed. Like I have no idea. And then when I arrive, it can only be better than a couch. And sometimes the couch is better than the bed. So no,
Well, I
I've
just
had
think it's
really
sometimes
good.
like you realize like, okay, I could pay for accommodation and I could pay for breakfast and all that, but then you're stuck in a room by yourself and you're not really experiencing the culture. Like to me, I totally understand why people travel for purposes of vacation, right? They want to get away from their jobs, they want to just take a break from things, and they want to stay in nice places. That makes total sense. But if you have the privilege to travel more long term, that's not how you really want to travel. You want to get to know different kinds of people, throw yourself into different situations, and especially I think the most interesting conversations that have taken place, and the coolest memories that I have are me staying in somebody's home, them waking up and
Hmm.
giving me their typical breakfast, taking me on a walk all day to places that I would take me hours to find on a blog, or maybe never ever find on a blog.
Oh, for
It's
sure.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
It's incredible. The people who you met through couch surfing, it's helped me so much with my Spanish. Like I I was learning Spanish and I wasn't getting anywhere because I was too close to the border here in Mexico. And
Yeah.
I just booked a place at a guy in Guadalajara, in one of the cities in Mexico, who didn't really speak a lot of English, and that's just where I just started speaking only Spanish. And yeah, they always show you all their favorite local places. Yeah, you get to
Oh,
know
they're
the
always
city and
bombed too,
everywhere you go. Oh yeah,
and
because
they're
they've
like
lived there for so long, they know
25
all the good
cents,
places.
like
Yeah.
street food or some place that they just know, and you're just like, this is the best food I've ever had. I couldn't have gotten this in
Oh
a
yeah.
4-star or 5-star restaurant. There's no way.
No, for sure. And I love also being able to bring something to them. Like
Yeah.
there's some of the couch surfers that I've couch surfed at that I still, well, we still we're still really good friends. And so many people I've met that I've made these connections with that you wouldn't necessarily make so easily at home. Because I don't know if maybe it's because you skip through the whole what do you do, where do you live, what do you want to do, like, you know, all of those. You kind of just that doesn't matter when you're traveling. You just skip through all of the like irrelevant parts and you just get to know
Yeah, yeah,
someone
yeah.
straight away. So that's really
Um,
nice.
so our time is running out here, but maybe 5 minutes left. I wanted to ask you last couple questions, and they have to do with being a woman and traveling. But then, what's the future like? Or what is your mindset like for the future? Is this something you can maybe sustain for a very very long time? Do you feel pressure from society to come back and establish a career, or I guess a more typical
I
career, or what are your feelings on all of those?
I feel absolutely no pressure to go back and start a career and do everything what everyone expects me to do. I did in the beginning. I thought I'd go away for a few months, I'd come back, and then I guess I'd start my job, get a mortgage, get a house, get a car, get all of that. And ever since I've been traveling, I've realized I don't need to do all of that, even though we think that's what we have to do and that's normal and that's what's going to make us happy. I realized that's not what made me happy. Traveling and like seeing places, meeting people, and having share anything but what you want to do is such a nice feeling. And also the thought of till I'm 70 and then retiring and then enjoying my life when my body's all old, it won't even be able to sustain yourself. It might not be the luxury like that you're used to, but it gives you so many things that are materialistic, but it brings you so much like to grow and evolve yourself. So yeah, I have no plans or pressure to start a career like most people would do back home. But my newest plan, or like short term, long term plan, is I'm gonna buy some land in Nicaragua with a bunch of friends that I've met traveling over the last years. You've met Ash and Nico. I've known Ash for like 5 years, and we're gonna get a piece of land together and build a house. So we'll all have a nice
That would
we'll
be
have a nice
amazing. Yeah.
house. here in Central America without the mortgage and without all the crazy paperwork that comes with it. So that's the plan for the
Well,
near
that
future.
is very inspiring, and it's good to hear that 5 years later you're still in love with what you do, and you still feel safe, and you look forward to. And the thing is, the world is a big place, so there's plenty of the places that you can go. And I guess the privilege with you
Oh,
too is that you have a passport that it saves a lot of headaches. You don't have to apply for a lot of visas, but
oh,
it's
for
really
sure.
inspiring to hear this kind of story. And I would love to talk more and about other stories, but I also have realized my podcasts are quite long, and I like to substantiate my conversations more. But I guess one last thing, what is your message to the world as a woman who travels by herself? How would you like to spread your message?
I would say just do it. Don't be scared or what people say or what you might read online. Just go out and explore it for yourself. If you already think you want to go traveling, there's already something inside you that feels the need to explore more and see different things. So I think you should listen to that gut and you should go out and explore everywhere that you need to go without feeling any pressure or judgment from people back home, your family, your teachers, anyone. You should just live your best life and enjoy all the beauties of this world.
I totally agree. Well, Megan, thank you so much for this conversation. I hope to see you very soon. And yeah, we'll stay in touch.
For sure. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.